Hello everyone and welcome to another DJ Lab tutorial. This video will be all about pads. Pad sounds are usually more in the background of the mix, but today we are going to give them the spotlight by designing 3 completely different pads from scratch. I'm working with the Arturia MiniFreak, but as always, the ideas and concepts shown in this video can be applied to most synthesizers. Let's get started. As I promised, we're going to do the sound design from scratch. This is what an initial patch on the MiniFreak sounds like. Let's change the oscillator type to Superwave, because I like its unison detune effect. The unison gives us a wider sound with modulation. Now we have a nice base for a dreamy sound, but it doesn't really pad yet. So the next and probably most important step is to adjust the amp envelope. Aim for relatively high attack and release settings to make the sound fade in and out more smoothly. Okay, cool. I like to keep the sustain at 0 so that I don't have to worry about how long I press the notes. And you can still adjust the overall length of the pad by using the decay knob. To further emphasize the amp envelope, we can also use the ADSR to modulate the filter frequency. All you have to do is turn the envelope knob and set the cutoff to taste. I advise to go gentle on this one though. If you want to make the sweep more pronounced, however, try to increase the resonance. Another thing to note is that the ADSR and the filter envelope have a really big impact on the sound, so you may have to readjust the attack, release and decay settings until it sounds right. Just trust your ears. Let's make use of the MiniFreak's second oscillator and create another layer to our pad sound. To keep things simple for now, I will just use the same sound that we just programmed, but transpose it up an octave. Set the oscillator mix using the volume knob. I aim for a nice shimmery layer on top of our main pad. Instead of using octaves, you can also transpose the second oscillator by 5 or 7 semitones to create more complex chords. Okay, transpose by 7 semitones to get this. Let's try 5 semitones. To conclude our basic pad sound and make use of the diverse arsenal of the MiniFreak, let's add some effects. Reverb and delay are no-brainers here, because they wash out our sound even further. I will start with reverb. It's usually in this third FX slot, so we have to press the select button a couple of times, then press the encoder to turn it on. I like to drown the sound in the reverb. So let's aim for really high decay and mix settings. To make the reverb more airy, I will set the dampening at 0, so we get all the high frequencies. Increase the decay, not to 100 because that's almost infinite decay, I think, and that would be too much. And also increase the send level to about, I don't know, 75. Now you start to hear the tail, but let's set the dampening to 0 to get it more upfront. Using a delay has a similar effect in terms of washiness, so let's check it out. It's in our second slot, so just select it, again press the encoder, and it should be on. To match the mellow vibe of our pad, I'm going to use a really long delay time. This also makes the repeats more noticeable and has great synergy with the filter envelope modulation. Turn up the time, I'll just crank it to max. While I like the reverb very upfront, I'm going to set the feedback and mix for the delay a little bit lower. Just make sure that you can hear the tails in between the envelope cycles. To top things off, we can also use stereo or ping-pong settings to make the sound wider. Press Shift and turn the effects knob, the type knob, to select different effect settings, and I'm going to choose ping-pong. And this is it for our basic pad. Let's hear it in action. Of course, you could also use chorus, flanger or phaser modulation effects, but we are going to cover those in the upcoming chapters. So far so good. Let's get trancey and transform our basic pad into something that, for example, Danish DJ and producer Courtesy would use. For this trancey feeling, we need some kind of gate effect. To recreate this on the MiniFreak, we are going to use the LFO shaper and map it to the cutoff frequency of the filter. To access the LFO shaper, we have to hold the Shift button and press the LFO Edit button. Now the 16 step buttons light up, representing our LFO cycle. By pressing a step button, the MiniFreak starts to draw in a little LFO shape. To create the short aspects of our gated waveform, we just have to press the buttons 1 and 3. And to create the longer one, I'm going to press and hold 5 and then press 7. Adjust the slope using the mod strip. And set the cycle length, because we only need half a cycle. The next thing we want to do is to route this LFO shape to our cutoff frequency using the mod matrix. Now we only have to set the amount of modulation, but let's hear the pad dry again first. Let's add a chorus effect for maximum cheesiness. To emulate this lo-fi typical crackling sound, we are going to use the MiniFreak's noise oscillator. You can already hear it in the background. Since we only want the noise aspect of the sound, we are going to set all the knobs to 0. Let's add the compressor to create another noise layer with more movement. Set the time to 0 and the intensity to 100. Adjust the amount to taste. For our harmonic content, we are going to use the second oscillator and set the wave to the bass oscillator. To add even more noise to our sound, we can turn the shape knob. The wave knob introduces some saturation. To make our pad sound a little bit less aggressive, we are going to use the filter envelope again. To make this pad more vibey, we will route the LFO to the pitch of the bass oscillator. So this is it for our lo-fi noise pad. The last pad we're going to create is probably my favorite one. I call it the PlayStation pad because it reminds me of the notorious video game music of the late 90s. This sound is usually based on samples, but I'm going to recreate it using 2 oscillator layers. One for the FM-style bell sound on top and another for the harmonic content below. Let's start with the FM layer, using the oscillator type called FM on the MiniFreak. To start things off, I'm going to transpose this oscillator up for 3 octaves, set the wave and shape knobs to 0 and timbre to 100. 36 semitones equals 3 octaves, wave and shape to 0, timbre 100. To add a bit more movement to this layer, I'm going to route the envelope to the timbre and shape knobs. For our harmonic layer, I'm going to use the super wave again. As usual, we're going to add some reverb for the washiness next. Next we bring in some delay. And a flanger in our first FX slot. And now we're almost there. The last and final thing to do is to set up the MiniFreak's chord mode so that we can play complex chords using only one button. I'm just going to press and hold the chord button and then press and hold the desired keys. I'm going for C, E flat, G, B, and D. Now I can play complex chords typical to this 90s PlayStation pad sound using only single notes on my keyboard. That's it for our pad sounds. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.